Again, thank you everyone for coming and joining us tonight to learn more about the Old Colony Vision 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan. This is a planning document that is federally required by all MPOs in the United States. It's updated every 4 years. And so as it happens, now is our update to the plan, which was last updated in 2020. My name is Bill McNulty. I'm a principal transportation planner with Old Colony Planning Council. I manage long-range planning for OCPC and as well as the Transportation Improvement Program. I'll introduce my colleagues that are here tonight. Our Deputy Director and Transportation Program Manager, Charles Kilmer, he's joining us. Now the Principal Transportation Planner, Ray Garino, is here. A Senior Transportation Planner, Sean Bailey. And I think that's all from our staff. So we're all happy to have you here tonight. I'll also mention other planners that are key in developing this that couldn't join us tonight. Guocheng Li, he's a principal transportation planner, works with Ray on the highway side of things, and Kyle Mowat, he's been working a lot on bicycle and pedestrian components of this plan. So again, thank you for joining. Just some housekeeping. If you do have any questions or comments, we'll ask you to use the raise hand feature, and one of my colleagues will call on you, and you'll be allowed to talk and ask a question. You can also use the chat box. And the main goal of the objective of this webinar is basically just to provide an overview of what the LRTP is, introduce you to it, and then provide you an opportunity to voice to us your priorities, what you see most important for the transportation network in the region through the next 20 to 25 years or so. And so, whatever you feel is most important, by all means, we want to hear what your priorities are, as we really like to reflect the priorities of the general public in this plan to make the most robust, comprehensive plan that we can. So the Long Range Transportation Plan, as I mentioned, is a federally required document that's updated by MPOs every 4 years. It's a planning and visioning and policy document that guides transportation planning over the next 20 years. We like round numbers. So this plan is going through beyond that 20-year horizon. So it's actually going through 2050, so 25 years or so. The socioeconomic forecasts that are being generated for this plan. So population projections, housing projections, and employment projections, those are being carried out to 2050. So that's an update over the last go around, whereas in previous plans only went to 2040. So it's a big update. It's a collaborative and cooperative process with all our federal, state, local, and regional partners. And we enjoy a good working relationship with all our partners. And so far it's been a great process. So just to give you an idea where we've been with this plan and where we're going. So this is a development timeline. So this plan the development started off in earnest last fall. We developed some goals and objectives. We also developed some planning scenarios, which I'm going to go over shortly. We started our data collection process. So our planners have been actively going out, conducting a physical inventory of the network, doing conditions analysis, determining what it's going to take to bring that network up to a state of good repair, and been collaborating with our stakeholders. So this is where we are right now, and now we're beginning this public outreach process where we're actively going out and engaging the public to learn more about your priorities and your vision for the future. There is a survey that was launched a couple months ago That survey is still active, and if you want more information, if you want to take that survey, by all means, please contact me. You'll see my contact information at the end of this presentation, and I'll be happy to provide that to you. So going forward, over the next couple of months, we're going to be continuing this engagement process, meeting with stakeholders, and then we're going to start presenting the plan in earnest at different groups. Our Joint Transportation Committee, our Board of Directors, the Old Colony Planning Council, various groups will be meeting with MassDOT, meeting with stakeholders, and eventually we're looking to have this plan endorsed, which we finalized in July. So we're probably about 2/3 of the way through the development of this plan, and we're right on track where we want to be, and it's going well so far. So what are the goals of this plan? Safety. Obviously, we want a safe transportation system. We want to minimize serious injuries and fatalities on the network. We strive for Vision Zero. You may have heard of Vision Zero. That's a term that we want zero preventable fatalities on the transportation network. That's a goal that we're constantly striving towards. And I should note that all NPOs, just like they're required to update this document every year, we're also required to set performance targets. These performance targets are not outlined in this PowerPoint presentation, but we do have targets, specific targets for safety, network performance, and reliability, and so in physical condition. So those performance targets are identified in the plan, and all these goals are aimed at achieving those performance measures in one way or another. Transparency and equity. Obviously, we want a fully transparent process. All our meetings are well advertised. All our documents are presented in multiple languages. We want a fully transparent and equitable process as we program our transportation improvements in the future. Economic vitality. It's important that the transportation network support a robust local economy here on the South Shore and Greater Brockton, as well as looking northward to Greater Boston. Security. We want the network to be secure. Accessibility. We want a fully accessible transportation system. So, making sure that all roadway users, regardless of their physical capability, are able to fully access the system. A clean environment. We strive that the transportation improvements that we make at best don't harm the environment any further, and the ultimate goal is to improve the environment. So for example, roadway networks, roadway projects, the goal is to reduce emissions over what they currently are, and overall, and in doing so, reducing the overall volume of greenhouse gases being let into the atmosphere, and hopefully curbing climate change. Resiliency. We want a resilient transportation system, a system that's going to be withstand physical forces that come from climate change. State of good repair. It's fairly obvious. We want the system to be in good shape. Want roadways, pavement conditions in a either excellent or good condition, and a minimum amount of roadway miles in poor condition. Same side on transit. Want transit facilities in good condition. Efficiency, a system that minimizes cost and is efficient to the movement of people and goods. So those are the goals of our plan. I know that I went through some relatively quickly, but those are the principal goals that guide the rest of the document. And that was why that was the first step in developing this plan, identifying those goals. And for the most part, they're carried year from update to update. They're tweaked here and there a little bit as as priorities shift. More emphasis given on some than others, or more emphasis now than in the past. For example, climate change, like a resilient transportation system that's becoming increasingly important as we see more severe impacts from severe weather events year to year. So planning scenarios, this was a federal requirement that came about 4 years ago. And so what we do here is, and this was developed in a cooperative process with our state partners as the state updated their statewide long-range plan. We identified 6 factors that could affect how the region grows in the future and affect how transportation operates in the future. And so these are things that we have to consider over the future of this plan. So that the 6 factors are climate change, the future of work, population trends, housing and economy, prosperity, and technology. And I'll briefly go through those. So climate change, what could happen under these various scenarios? So if climate change accelerates, then we'd see more areas of the coastline needing evacuation. More of our transportation network would be vulnerable and potentially cut off during severe weather events. Than a scenario where it's kind of the status quo, then or a reversal. If we're able to completely curb GHG emissions and start to reverse the trend. The future of work, this is a big one. Obviously, things have changed a lot since 2020. And we're still trying, all of us, OCPC, our state and federal partners are still trying to get a grasp of how things are changing. I'm sorry. So looking at this plan, we look at, what if things accelerated with how they've gone the last couple of years? Do jobs continue to be remote? Doesn't appear to be so. We've seen a rapid rebound back to the office the last 6 months or so. So this might be a scenario where you're looking at the latter of this, the reversal of trends. But these are 3 trends that we're looking into the future work. Population trends, again, a major factor in this region with an aging population. As a population ages and people age out of their homes, how is that going to affect the region, and particularly how does it impact the transportation system? Housing and economy, again, fairly obvious. So I think we're all well aware of the housing situation in Massachusetts. Very limited supply right now, soaring costs. Does that continue? Does it get worse? Does it accelerate? Does it kind of maintain a status quo in the foreseeable future, or does it reverse? Do we see a housing boom and more housing availability? Prosperity. So how does the economy change based on the economic well-being of the region? Do we become a more knowledge-based economy, or does it become a more diverse economy? Technology, how's technology going to impact the transportation choices going forward? Again, does it current trends accelerate? Do we maintain the status quo, or do trends reverse? So those are the 6 major planning factor scenarios that we're looking at this plan. And again, if you have more questions about that, you can ask now, or you can always reach out to me offline, and I'm happy to go through it more. But at this point, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Ray, who develops the Regional Highway Network chapter, and he's going to talk a little bit about that chapter.
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to talk a little bit about our travel demand model, which is in development currently. And our colleague, Ho-Jong Lee, is actually developing this model. So it's if you're not familiar with travel demand models, actually the bottom where it says 4-step modeling is how the model works. Trip generation is based on socioeconomic projections. It's based on traffic analysis zones and generating trips. And that's and there's a lot of factors that go into that, as far as demographics, the economy, and a lot of these factors that Bill was talking about. It used to be, commuting trips and retail trips, and a lot of that has changed over the past 4 or 5 years, 3 years or so since COVID. So it'd be interesting to see how these traffic models pan out with a lot of these changes. There's a lot of retail that's done from warehousing, like Amazon, which changes the retail commuting trips, and obviously working from home. That's a big change too. But as I'm going to show later on, a lot of the traffic is actually rebounded, so it's almost like pre-COVID. But the travel demand model is links and nodes, and it's the highway network, basically, which is made up of arterials, collectors, freeways, which are the links. It's made up of the traffic analysis zone, as I said, which speaks to trip generation. Trip distribution stage is based on the highway network, which is all of our arterials and the capacity on the arterials, which again, as Bill previously mentioned, with climate change, that could impact the infrastructure of the network. So what happens is, and also mode split. We mostly, though, in our region, we're an auto-dependent region, although we have pretty good passenger rail and as well as transit and bus. But there's a mode split in there that's developed too, which calculates the vehicle trips, and then trip assignment, which assigns the last part of the model, which assigns the vehicle trips on the network, and that will get us a base year, and we'll calibrate that base year based on real traffic counts on real arterials. So we'll get a base model, and that's going to be calibrated or validated by the number of by the traffic counts, automatic traffic counts, and then we use that model to put changes. We can do infrastructure changes or to forecast and support scenarios, whether it's a change in infrastructure or a change in the socioeconomic assumptions, and that'll give us future year traffic estimates. Right now, as I said, it's in development, and Ho-Jong is waiting for socioeconomic development, which is going to come from a committee made up of all the major players in Eastern Massachusetts, MassDOT, the RPAs, et cetera. Next slide, please. So our highway chapter, what's included is travel demand. Our highway network is continues to be a primary mode for the movement of people and goods in the region. So we're still auto dependent, but as I said, we do have some great transit between BAT and GATRA, and the connections they make with MBTA as well as passenger rail. So, and the other trend that we've seen is that along our arterials and corridors, there's an increase in trip generation and turning movement conflicts within actual highway corridors that decreases capacity, and that's because of development along major arterials. So that's a trend that we've seen before, and it continues. It was pre-COVID, it still continues, and what that does, it disperses employment, and it contributes to auto dependency. It's harder to deal with auto dependency when you have dispersed development along corridors, and also there's a challenge of mode shift because transit does require certain densities of residents and as well as employment in order to be viable. Old Colony region also continues to maintain its suburb to core city commute to Boston, which is traditional. If you've ever driven along Route 3 or 24, you understand that there's still that core city to Boston, as well as the connection that BAT makes with the MBTA. Travel demand in Brockton and Plymouth was 40 to 60% of 2019 levels in 2020 due to COVID, but now it's almost back to 2019 levels. I didn't actually have the graphs here in these slides, but Sean Bailey's did some really great documentation of the impact of COVID on traffic in our region. Although this 40 to 60% comes from the state, but we also have graphs in our plan that show how traffic has dipped down, which validates this 40 to 60%, and now it's almost up to 29. And today in 2023, the traffic is almost back to 2019 levels. Our highway chapter also includes truck freight. As far as freight goes, we have, Bill talked about performance measures. We have targets. We've adopted the same. The MPO has adopted the same targets for performance for freight as the state. So our percent of person miles on the interstate in Old Colony that's reliable was 100%. Now it sounds really good, but we only have 2.56 miles, so we get off pretty easy with interstate, and that's I-495. And I used INRIX data. However, we have a lot of non-interstate NHS mileage in our region, and our reliability was pretty good there. We've hit our targets there. It's 90.2%, and in 2017 it was above 80%. That's what our target was supposed to be, and we've been above that for 3 years in a row. Some of the issues with truck freight in the region are kind of obvious. The needs, signal timing and coordination improvements in key corridors, improved turning radii at key intersections, maintain pavement in a state of good repair, improve traffic flow, congestion, and bottlenecks in the corridors, especially those utilized by trucks. Brockton specifically has a major concern with east-west truck route through the downtown. There are major state routes through the downtown, and especially under the railroad underpasses and tight turns through the downtown. And our highways, I-495 needs longer acceleration and deceleration lanes. That short mileage of interstate there, the connection to Route 24, and also Route 24 and Route 3 are not to interstate standards, even though they're not interstate highways. The short acceleration and deceleration lanes are a problem with crashes and just with creating congestion. And also for cyclists, we want to encourage side guards on trucks to protect cyclists. Next, please. Bridges. Old Colony region has 18 structurally deficient bridges based on the state's listing. 5 of the 18 are under design. Again, there's increased pressure on bridges and culverts due to severe weather by climate change. Congestion and bottlenecks. Some of these issues I kind of went over previously in the other slide, but mode shift. We want to promote mode shift by increasing transit, carpool, vanpool, and non-motorized transportation modes. Want to reduce traffic congestion and improve level of service, maintain and improve transit efficiency and capacity, and that includes coordinating intermodal areas with transit, good sidewalks around transit stations and bus stops is very important for pedestrian safety, and people will use transit more if you have the system where it's safe to access transit. Increased automobile and bicycle parking capacity near transit. Again, intermodal connections. Eliminate bottlenecks on limited access highways and on freight network. One of the biggest bottlenecks is actually the interchange between Route 24 and Route 128 or Route 90, I-93. It's actually not in our region, but it backs up 5-7 miles into our region, and that's because of a lack of acceleration and deceleration at that major interchange. We want to improve mode choice and coordination of modes, reduce the number and size of gaps in ADA in the sidewalk network, increase the use of traffic signal priority, hold a green light for transit vehicles and traffic signal preemption for emergency vehicles. We do have that at some intersections, obviously not all. Monitor utilization and congestion levels at commuter rail and park and ride facilities. We do that every year, I believe twice a year. And obviously improve accessibility for all modes, for all users. That's in concert with the Complete Streets methodology. And I believe that's all I have for the highway. And I'll be happy to answer questions. Maybe afterwards we will have a question and answer period. So thanks.
Shane O'Brien did put a question in the chat. I don't know if we want to address it now. He said that I wanted to see, as part of this plan, to see if there are any opportunities or goals in the future for the region to look to establish a transportation management association.
Sure, we can certainly add that. Yeah, that's I haven't I have heard of them and seen them in other RPAs, but I haven't really gone into it. But if there's an interest in it, absolutely.
Charlie, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. So yeah, that's definitely one of the strategies that can be included in the long range plan. And, that's one of the things, that there's the Metro West TMA, and, it takes a strong regional collaboration and partnership. So, Shane, that's certainly something that we can take a look at in the region. Well, Sean, looks like you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. So with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Sean Bailey, who will talk a little bit about the transit chapter.
Yes, thank you, Bill. As Bill stated earlier, my name is Sean Bailey. I'm one of the senior transportation planners here at the Old Colony Planning Council, and I am heading up writing of the regional transit chapter of the Long Range Transportation Plan. I am the office's primary liaison with the Regional Transit Authority in Brockton, the Brockton Area Transit Authority, and I have, a vast amount of experience with doing transit work, such as their ridership reports, and currently I'm working on their Title VI report. So now I will dive in to the transit chapter for the LRTP. So why is public transit necessary? For one, it improves the quality of life. It provides an alternative mode of transportation to your personal vehicles that just add more congestion to the road, add more greenhouse gas emissions. It provides an alternative mode of transportation to get to and from your destinations, whether it be work, shopping, medical appointments, etc. It allows for growth management. So it allows areas where there are public transit. It allows for transit-oriented development. It allows for people to have a more sustainable area to live and travel in. So it gives that opportunity as well. It increases economic development. So many areas of, a lot of municipalities, people need to drive to get there. So they need to drive, they need to find a place to park. If you're in Boston, obviously you have to pay for parking, as well as some other urban areas. So it allows, people, having public transit around definitely allows people an easy form of transportation to get to and from businesses, restaurants, anywhere that can do business. Creates more livable communities. So kind of, as I've already said, it helps kind of makes it a much more sustainable and resilient area, as Bill has mentioned earlier. Having public transit really just helps increase efficiency for one, and just makes areas much more desirable and better to live in. And then, kind of wrapping it up, sustainable development around transit. As I stated already, transit-oriented development has a lot of benefits for everybody involved. It has benefits for the residents. It has benefits for many local business owners. A lot of benefits to go around. Next slide, please. So here's a list of the transportation services that are in the OCPC region. For starters, we have public buses. We have the Brockton Area Transit Authority, BAT, that is located right in downtown Brockton, across from the police station, as well as the Brockton commuter rail station. Brockton Area Transit Authority bus reaches out into the towns of Stoughton, Easton, Avon, and Abington. And there's one route, their Ashmont route, that goes all the way up to the Ashmont Red Line station. They also provide services to the towns of Hanson and Rockland, East and West Bridgewater, as well as the town of Bridgewater, for which they also have a designated bus route for Bridgewater State University. GATRA, the Greater Attleboro Taunton Regional Transit Authority. They have two main hubs. They have one in Taunton and then another one out on the East Coast. They have routes that go into the towns of Plymouth, Kingston, and Duxbury that serve our easternmost regions. And then obviously the MBTA, a couple of their bus routes go into Avon and Brockton, and one of their bus routes actually goes to the Montello commuter rail station, which is also serviced by Brockton Area Transit. So it gives a nice connection to the MBTA. Paratransit services, Brockton Area Transit also provides that. In addition to their fixed route service, as well as GATRA and the South Shore Community Action Council, they provide, SSCAC provides paratransit services in all 17 of OCPC's communities, and GATRA provides paratransit services in, I believe, 7 of our communities. Many of our municipalities in our region also have bus services from their councils on aging. And as I stated previously, commuter rail, there are 3 commuter rail lines that are in the OCPC region. There's the Stoughton branch off of the Providence line. There's the Middleborough Lakeville line, and then there is the Kingston line as well. There are multiple small airports in the OCPC region. There, such as the Plymouth Municipal Airport, as well as the Cranland Airport in the town of Hanson. There is a commuter bus, the Plymouth and Brockton bus service, that has 2 lines, one that goes up Route 3 and the other that goes up Route 24 and services the West Bridgewater Park and Ride. The Route 3 line services the Plymouth and Rockland park and rides that are, within our region. Highways, obviously, we've got routes 24 and Route 3, as I've already stated, that are very regional highways. They connect to Interstate 495. They connect to Interstate 93. They provide a nice regional option for anybody driving to or from or within our region. Rail freight down our various commuter rail lines. We have rail freight that utilizes the lines, and then ferry out of Plymouth. There's a line that goes out to Provincetown. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then so some of our barriers and problem statements with the regional transit network. Kind of continuing from the last time that we updated the LRTP, there is a continued increase in popularity of aging in place, which requires meeting the transit and paratransit needs of everybody who is aging in place. That requires adaptation and being able to meet any necessary needs. The gap that exists between BAT and GATRA is a continued need to be addressed. A few years ago, we actually did a study between BAT and GATRA to try to find a connection between the two RTAs, more specifically to try to get people in GATRA's region to Brockton to get them to the VA hospital on Route 123 off of Route 24. The Brockton VA hospital is the only VA hospital in southeastern Massachusetts and the Cape and Islands, which obviously, as there are significant VA needs, one of them is trying to get people to the Brockton area so that they can get to the VA hospital if they do not have the ability to get transported there themselves. Bicycle and vehicle parking is underutilized at our commuter rail stations and park and ride lots, as Ray Garino had previously mentioned. Within our congestion management process, in April and October every year, we visit multiple commuter rail stations and park and ride lots. All the commuter rail stations do have bicycle parking, but not a whole lot of bicycles are there. And I believe only 2 of the park and ride lots have bicycle parking, but it's all personal vehicles that are being parked at those locations. One thing that was also mentioned in the last LRTP round was that Plymouth lacks an intermodal center, such as, similar to the one with Brockton Area Transit. As I stated previously, GATRA has multiple bus routes over on the coast in our easternmost communities of Plymouth, Kingston, and Duxbury, but they don't have an intermodal center, which would both improve commuter as well as tourist experiences for anybody coming to the South Shore to visit and, would like to have an alternative mode of transportation other than a personal vehicle. And then lastly, BAT is working to acquire electric buses for their fleet, which would improve their fleet age as well as lower their carbon emissions. They are working with OCPC with the tip to working on acquire electric buses for their fleet. They currently do not have any, but they are working towards having a full electric fleet at some point in the future. And with that, I will turn it over to Bill to speak about the vulnerable roadway users.
Thank you, Sean. Good job. So I'll just talk briefly about vulnerable roadway users, which is kind of a new term that we use for anyone who's not in a motor vehicle or transit. So this includes pedestrians, bicyclists, people using mobility assistant devices, anything that basically connects people between those traditional systems and their destination. So I'll talk just briefly, identify some of the barrier and problem statements we've identified here, and how and what this plan strives to improve. So first and foremost, the Safe Routes to School program, it's utilization membership in that program of our public schools is below 100%. It had been only eligible for schools K through 8, and recently in the past year, high schools became eligible. So we're well below, with the addition of high schools, we're well below 100% participation, I should say, in the Safe Routes to School program. The region is highly automobile dependent, as Ray pointed out. That's definitely something that this plan looks to address, both through transportation policy as well as land use policy. Bicycle parking at our intermodal facilities is underutilized. The sidewalk network in the region in many places is below ADA standards and ADA accessible standards. The pedestrian and bicycle access to major employment centers is highly limited in many places, and infrastructure in many locations, and particularly our environmental justice populations, is substandard compared to other regions or other areas of the region, and so that's an issue that this plan looks to address. So how we address these, a lot of it's policy. So, for example, Safe Routes to School, working with our Safe Routes to School partners and getting that participation rate higher, advocating mode shift for people riding their bicycles to the in a more sense, for example, the commuter rail stations and parking, providing better parking that may encourage bicycle use, incorporating bicycle and pedestrian safety into all our planning efforts, and identifying gaps in the network, especially in our environmental justice areas, and how do we improve those gaps, as well as increasingly important, working with our community partners on age-friendly infrastructure. So making sure that, again, it's fully accessible to, as the population gets older, making sure our communities are age-friendly. So the financial outlook, I'm just going to briefly show you the financial outlook through 2044. The only reason why I show this is because this plan does have to be financially constrained. So projects that we identify have to, at least in the big picture, be fit within expected programming or expected available funding. And so this is the expected funding that's could come into the region through 2044. It's speculative. Honestly, it changes with every transportation legislation out of Washington. This could change dramatically. It usually goes up, doesn't usually go down. But this is the financial outlook. So that's not to say that we can't have projects that are not financially constrained. So we can have illustrative projects. So, for example, a major highway expansion, or one that's come up in past plan developments, say bringing Route 24 up to interstate standards. Right now, that would not be financially constrained, but we can include that as an illustrative project. And also, regionally significant projects are expected to be identified in the plan, whether they're financially constrained or not, financially constrained or illustrative. So, major capital investments we do identify in the plan. For example, One off the top of my head, Pleasant Street, Route 104 in Bridgewater. A need that's come up in the past is adding an on-ramp from Route 104 westbound onto Route 24 northbound. So that would be a regionally significant project that would be identified in the plan. So that kind of wraps up the presentation component of the of this webinar. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to questions or your input on priorities you see important.
Charlie has a question, Bill.
Okay.
So Bill, yeah, thank you for that overview of the finances. One of the questions we hear around the campus a lot is, hey, what about the discretionary opportunities from the bipartisan infrastructure law, and whether that would be a supplement to the long-range transportation plan? I think it would. And I think the numbers that you had on the slide are for like the roads.
Yeah, this is road
only.
bridge.
It doesn't include bridge funding nor transit funding. So this is basically like for the tip.
Mhm.
So there's substantially more money available for other modes and through other programs.
Yep, exactly. Thank you. And, just in terms of like looking at projects as well. So we generally only have an idea of the next 10 years. So we have a 5-year plan that's called our Transportation Improvement Program. We're actually developing that right now. So we have a 5-year plan for federal fiscal years 2024 through 2028. So that's in development now. That's not it obviously changes year to year, but that's a fairly concrete plan with actual projects programmed. And then beyond that, we have, for looking at 5 years beyond that, we have an idea of projects that could be programmed. So in the next 10 years, but going beyond 10 years, it becomes kind of really speculative, but this is kind of a high level overview of how things work. So it's not, I don't want anyone to get, because I remember this came up in 2020. I don't want anyone to get the impression that we're identifying a project to be programmed in 2032. That's not where we're at right now. It's really just the next 10 years that we really kind of have an idea about, and then after that, who knows?
Well, I don't have my hand raised, but I'm going to just make a couple comments. So first of all, my apologies for joining late, but Senator Brady had a couple questions on another project, but I also told him that this meeting was going on and he just wanted to express his support for OCPC staff and for those that are weighing with their comments and suggestions. So he does send, and I asked him to, he wanted me to relay his support for work that's being done, but I would probably say next steps they are to hear from those maybe that are on today's meeting and hear, Shane already had one suggestion, but if there's any other comments and suggestions, this is not the only time. Is that right, Bill? There's going to be some
That's
other.
correct.
So I don't know if there's anybody else that would have any comments.
I
don't see any others. I don't see any other questions either.
Yeah, so like Mary said, this is by far from the last opportunity to provide input. So we are going to have other presentations. We have monthly joint transportation committee meetings on the first Thursday of every month at noontime. Those are open to the public, and people are more than welcome to come to those meetings. And at each one through June, we'll be presenting portions of this plan. My contact information is on the page here. You can contact me directly, either by email or phone call, whatever your preference is. This webinar will also be posted on our YouTube channel, so people who are unable to attend tonight, they'll be able to view at their convenience and contact that way. So, and there'll be other engagement events. We're planning on having a table event at the Brockton Area Transit and Mobile Center. So we'll have an opportunity to meet people, meet commuters, and discuss the plan there. And we're also actively searching out opportunities to engage people in the public at meetings that are occurring, meetings and events.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Bill. And access to jobs, education, access to other communities is critical, not just only for our region, but across this Commonwealth. And, I'm very proud of the staff and your work that you've done to date and years past, and know that working with our communities and Brockton Area Transit and others, it's going to be, your input is valuable and to us and as we continue to plan. So thank you, OCPC staff, and to those that participated today.
Thank you, Mary. We have a great working relationship with all our regional partners, whether it's MassDOT on the highway side or Brockton Area Transit or GATRA. It's a great partnership across the board, and we're fortunate to have these working relationships. And you mentioned Senator Brady having the support of our legislative delegation. It really makes the development of these plans that much better for that.
And Bill, earlier when you were speaking about the survey, I provided the link in the chat for anybody who has yet to fill it out and would like to.
Thank you. I saw that. I meant to mention it.
So one of the things with the long range plan, this is a platform and a vehicle that can be referenced in grant applications. So this is an important document, and email your project needs to Bill here on the slide, wmcnulty@ocpcrpa.org, to see if that project need or that gap or that problem statement can be identified in this long range plan, because this plan is extremely important because it can help you with showing support for your project if it's listed in the plan itself, as a concept, as a policy, as Shane talked about the TMA. This is an important platform that's typically referenced in federal grant applications such as the RAISE program, Reconnecting Communities, and the like. So, don't be shy. Send Bill your project needs and ideas and projects for your communities. And certainly folks at the GATRA and BAT as well, it's important to have your projects or project needs listed in this plan.
Mm-hmm.
Great point, Charlie. I don't see any other questions or hands raised.
Okay. So if there's no other questions or comments, again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and look forward to continuing to work with you and hear from you, and develop a great plan that we will be endorsed this July.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for your leadership.
you.
And
Thank you.